A billionaire secretly followed his maid one night. What he found on the other side of that hospital window will break you in half. Victor Aldaine had not built a $3 billion empire by trusting people. He had built it by watching them. 40 years of calculated suspicion had sharpened his instincts to a razor edge, and at 61, those instincts never slept. The pewter at his temples, the quiet authority in his posture, these were not signs of age. They were armor. Tonight, that armor was on full display. Charcoal overcoat, Italian leather shoes, a watch that cost more than most people earned in a year. And his eyes, cold, precise, unreadable, were locked on a woman who had no idea she was being followed. Her name was Claudette Moreau. For 6 years, she had kept his Manhattan townhouse in flawless order. She arrived every morning at 6, moved through his rooms like a whisper, and was gone by 2. She never spoke unless spoken to, never left anything out of place, never gave him a single reason to notice her. Until 3 weeks ago, the shadows beneath her eyes had deepened. She had dropped weight she could not afford to lose. Twice, he had caught her on the phone in the corridor, voice low, words spilling out in urgent French, her free hand pressed flat against the wall, as though bracing for impact. That afternoon, he had seen something that he could not let go. He had passed the kitchen doorway and stopped. Claudette was actually sitting, in one of his chairs, something she had never once done in 6 years. Her face was buried in both hands. Her shoulders shook in complete, silent collapse. Then, in less than a minute, she pulled herself upright, wiped her face clean, and went back to polishing the countertops as if nothing had happened at all. Before we continue, tell us in the comments what time it is and where you are watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's get back to our story. Victor Aldaine stood in that hallway for a long time after she left. He needed to understand what could shatter a person so completely and still leave them standing. The city was wet by the time Claudette locked up and walked to the bus stop. Victor followed 2 car lengths behind, his driver instructed to say nothing. The route carried them away from the polished towers of Midtown and deeper into neighborhoods the glossy Manhattan brochures never showed. She transferred buses twice. Then she walked 6 long blocks through streets where half the lights were out until she stopped in front of a building called Mercy General Hospital, a structure that looked exhausted, worn through by the weight of everything it had witnessed. Victor parked and followed on foot, painfully aware of how absurd he must have looked in this neighborhood, in this coat. He watched Claudette speak briefly to the front desk, then step into the elevator. He waited, counted to 60, then approached the security guard. The woman who just came in, which floor? The guard barely looked up. Pediatric ICU. 6. The word landed in Victor's chest like a stone dropped into still water. Pediatric. He took the stairs. 6th floor. The smell reached him before anything else. Antiseptic layered over something quieter and heavier, something no amount of cleaning could fully cover. He moved through the corridor, following the sound of her voice, soft and cracking, until he found the room. He stopped at the glass. Claudette was kneeling beside a hospital bed, still wearing her work clothes, the gray uniform she ironed every morning before arriving at his door. She hadn't stopped to change. Her hands were laced together so tightly the knuckles had gone pale, pressed against her forehead, and words were pouring out of her in whispered French. Every breath looked like a war. In the bed lay a small boy, 7, maybe 8 years old, completely still. Oxygen lines for tubes threading into one thin arm, a cardiac monitor ticking steadily in the background. A stuffed rabbit was tucked against his side, worn nearly bald from years of being held. Victor looked at the boy's face. Light eyes, fair skin, fine blonde hair. The child was white, completely, unmistakably white. And Claudette, kneeling over him in her gray uniform, whispering prayers with her whole body, looked nothing like him. Nothing at all. Victor stood frozen behind that glass, his billion-dollar mind grinding to a halt, trying to solve something that would not add up. Who was this child? Why was she here kneeling like this, as if the world would end when he stopped breathing? He could not walk away. He found a chair in a dim stretch of hallway where he could see without being seen, and he sat. His phone buzzed continuously, board members, attorneys, a conference call from Singapore. He silenced every single one. 2 hours passed. Finally, a doctor entered the room, a woman in her mid-40s, wearing the look of someone who had spent years delivering news she wished she didn't have to give. Victor moved closer to the door and listened. "Mrs. Moreau." The doctor's voice was gentle, careful. "We've completed the second treatment cycle. Theo is holding steady, but without the transplant, we're managing the disease, not defeating it. You understand what that means?" The sound Claudette made was not a word. "How long?" she whispered. 3 months. For at the outside. Claudette's head dropped. When she raised it again, her voice had been stripped of everything but the question underneath it. The funding. "I've contacted 17 foundations. I've written letters, made calls. I'm still $195,000 short. I haven't stopped." "I know you haven't." The doctor placed a hand on her shoulder. "But Theo's foster placement doesn't cover experimental immunotherapy. The transplant procedure isn't reimbursable under his current coverage. And you're already carrying $52,000 in prior treatment debt." "I know what I'm carrying." A silence opened between them. Then Claudette began to speak, quietly, in the tone of someone reciting something they had memorized because the act of remembering it in full was too much to do every time. "Theo was 4 months old when Isabel died. Isabel was my closest friend in this country, my only real friend for the first 3 years I was here. She had no family, no one who would come. I held her hand when she went, and I promised her, I swore to her, that I would not let her son disappear into the system." She stopped, steadied herself. "I couldn't adopt. My papers weren't fully in order. I was working 3 jobs and barely surviving. But I became his foster mother. I have been his mother. He has always called me Maman." Victor pressed his back against the wall. "He has a matched donor in the registry," Claudette continued, her voice now stripped bare. "The donor is ready. The surgery can be scheduled, but without the money." "I know," the doctor said. "I work for a household in Manhattan from 6 in the morning until 2. Then I clean a corporate building from 4 until midnight. Every dollar I earn above rent goes to this hospital. Every dollar. I have not bought clothes in 2 years. I eat once a day. I sleep 4 hours if I am lucky." Her voice did not rise. It did not tremble. It simply stated the facts one after another, like a woman reading out charges at her own trial. "And my boy is still dying." Victor Aldaine stood in that hallway, and something he had believed long dead opened in his chest like a fault line. "With the transplant," the doctor said quietly, "his survival rate is 78%. The donor match is excellent. This is a child who can live a full life, Mrs. Moreau. We just need the resources to get him there." Claudette turned back to the bed. She lifted Theo's small hand in both of hers. Man is coming back for you," she whispered in English now, as if she needed him to understand without translation. "I'm going to find the way. I always find the way. You just stay, okay? You just keep being my brave boy." She kissed his forehead. She tucked the rabbit more firmly under his arm. She stood, her spine straightened, her face composed itself, feature by feature, into the calm, efficient expression Victor had seen every morning for 6 years. She walked toward the door. Victor barely made it to the stairwell before she stepped into the corridor. He pressed himself flat against the wall and watched through the gap as she passed, back straight, face serene, carrying the weight of everything she refused to let show. He understood, finally. Every polished surface in his home had cost her something she could not get back. Every quiet hour of seamless service had been performed on borrowed strength. She had been drowning in his kitchen every single morning, and she had never once let it touch her work. Victor did not go home, did not sleep. At 3 in the morning, he was on the phone with his attorney, his financial director, and the administrator of Mercy General. By 5:30, the transfers had been authorized. By 5:45, they had cleared. At 6 o'clock sharp, he heard Claudette's key in the lock. He was sitting at the kitchen table waiting. She saw him and stopped walking. The color left her face. Her hand found the door frame. "Mr. Aldaine, I'm so sorry. I'll start your coffee immediately. If something is wrong with my work, I can." "Claudette." She went still. "I was at the hospital last night. I saw Theo." The silence that followed lasted several seconds. She gripped the frame harder. "I can explain. My personal situation has never once affected my. How much do you need?" She stared at him. "For the transplant, for the back debt. Tell me the number." Her mouth opened. Nothing came. Victor looked at his phone. 195,000 for the procedure. 52 for the debt. I've sent 270,000 to Mercy General, applied to Theo's account, with a reserve for complications. He turned the screen toward her. "It cleared 4 minutes ago." Claudette's legs gave way. She sat down hard in the chair, his chair, the same chair he had watched her collapse into the day before, and her hands came up over her face, and she broke. Not quietly, deeply. 6 years of held breath, released all at once. Victor sat across from her and was surprised to feel the sting of his own eyes. When she could finally speak, she looked at him and whispered, "Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I've had more money than I could spend in 4 lifetimes, and I've been spending it on things that never mattered. And for 6 years, the most decent person I've ever encountered has been working inside my house, holding a dying child together with nothing but her own will." He paused. "I didn't know what strength was actually for until last night." 11 weeks later, Victor stood in a different hallway at Mercy General. Through the glass, the room looked nothing like it had before. Theo was sitting up in bed, thin but bright-eyed, laughing at something Claudette was acting out with the bald, stuffed rabbit. The transplant had worked. His counts were rising. In 3 weeks, he would go home. Claudette looked up and saw Victor in the doorway. She waved him in. Theo studied him with the frank, unguarded curiosity only children possess. "Maman says you're the reason I got better." Victor pulled up a chair beside the bed. "Your maman is the reason. I just paid a bill." The boy considered this seriously. "She says you're a good man." Victor looked at Claudette. She was smiling, a real one, the kind he had never once seen in his kitchen. "I'm working on it," he said. Walking out of that hospital into the evening air, Victor understood that the glass partition had not simply been a window. It had been the thing separating the life he'd been living from the one that was actually worth something. He had stepped through it, and he had no intention of going back. Drop your location in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today.